You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The shill lady sings it. The iron lady sings it. That makes it official and gets everyone woken up. It sure puts a sharp ping in my brain and gets me going down the road. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. As always, for 16 years, 2,000 episodes, we've been bringing you the most brilliant people, the CEOs, the billionaires, the White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the great minds, the people who bring you their stories of life. And, of course, we call the stories of life the owner's manual to life, as always. For further show your family, friends, and relatives, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. We have a wonderful returning guest who's been here before. Frank Figliuzzi joins us on the show. His newest book is out May 28th, 2024. It's called Long Haul: Hunting the Highway Serial Killers. And man, if that doesn't capture your attention, I don't know what will, people. Frank Figliuzzi was the FBI's Assistant Director for Counterintelligence, where he served 25 years as a special agent and directed all espionage investigations across the government. He is a national security contributor for NBC News and the columnist for MSNBC Daily. He is the author of the national bestseller, The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence. You can check that show out from a couple years ago. Welcome to the show, Frank. How are you?
I'm Chris, and it's obvious that I am the exception that proves the rule that you have brilliant people.
Oh, come on.
None of those folks were available today, but I'm filling in.
You were with the FBI for 25 years. I know they have a high code of conduct because I read your book.
That's true. Thank you.
Yeah, they don't honor dummies over there. I don't know about. I'm not going to make jokes about Space Force. There are good people over there. So, Frank, give us a 30,000, or give us a .com. Actually, we probably want to start off with a .com of where people can find you on the interwebs.
Oh yeah, thanks. So first, since we're talking about the book, you can buy the book anywhere: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, go online, Books A Million, all of that. It's available now, doing well. But if you really want to know what I'm doing behind the scenes, projects I'm working on, interviews I've done like this one, you want to go to frankfigliuzzi.com, sign up for free. You'll get regular alerts of what I've been doing and what I'm up to.
There you go. So your new book, Long Haul: Hunting the Highway Killers, and I just want to make clear, I did not do any of it. Frank, tell us what this new book is up to.
Yeah, sure. Look, this is a true crime FBI's highway serial killings initiative. The FBI, the numbers here are staggering. The FBI has identified at least 850 murders of women, mostly sex-trafficked women, but not all, alongside our nation's highways in just the past few decades. Here's some more staggering numbers. 200 of those 850 cases are considered active and unsolved.
Holy crap.
The numbers of murders continues to rise. And when I asked the FBI, how many suspects do you have out there in this long haul community for these unsolved murders? The answer was 450.
Wow. That is insane. And why is it been easy for this to be happening and hard for the FBI to solve it?
Yeah, I dig deeply into this as I drove. I rode 2,000 miles in a big rig to help me research this book, and I'm sure we'll get into that. I wanted to study the three subcultures involved: long haul trucking,
and there's
sex trafficking, and thirdly, crime analysis. What's it like to live the life in all three categories? But there's 25 long-haul truckers currently in prison for multiple murders, and the FBI is quite confident that we currently have multiple serial killing truckers on our highways.
Wow. And is it hard to catch them because they're mobile and they're moving between different states and always on the road?
So the number one profession of serial killers is long haul trucking. No other profession comes even close. So what's happening in these cases, Chris, is they're exploiting the seams in law enforcement jurisdiction. They will grab their victim in one jurisdiction, murder and or rape her in a second jurisdiction, and dump the body in a third jurisdiction. So this wreaks havoc with police departments and sheriff's offices all saying, I think it's your case. No, it's your case. We have no identity on the majority of these bodies. It takes decades to even identify the name of the victim, let alone find the killer. The killers, before someone finds this body, which, by the way, can be weeks or months later, this trucker is long gone. And then the investigative work, think about this. An investigator going to a trucking company, going to all trucking companies, mom and pop shops, medium size and the big ones, and saying, can you give me all of your truckers that have passed through this state, or this rest stop in the past year, the past 6 months? It is monumental. Add to this one more factor, at least, no one is demanding justice for this victim, meaning the family members don't even know, in most of these cases, that their trafficking victim loved one is missing, let alone dead. And the squeaky wheel gets the grease at the police department. Yeah. So you've got no one championing the cause. And quite frankly, these cases often drop to the bottom of the pile in priority, in part because once the police learn that this someone was being trafficked, was in the sex trade, the attitude seems to change. And
really? Wow. That's unfortunate. But, a lot of these people, sometimes they either don't have family or aren't in touch with their family. And it's like you say, their family may never know that they've disappeared. Don Winslow, he's been on the show. He's a wonderful gentleman. He built a true crime masterpiece. So there you go. I got the plug in there. Frank, we'll round back to the book. But give us your background. How did you grow up? What shaped you? What motivated you to become an FBI agent and go through the service and then eventually move to book writing?
Yeah, it's funny. I can recall my parents and family members when I told them I was going to major in English literature as an undergrad saying, what in God's name are you going to do with that? And sadly, my parents did not live to see me write 2 books, including a national, but that got me to law school. I was raised in a family where there was good and evil presented, right? The world is filled with good people and not so good people. You better make sure you're on the right side of justice and fairness. So that was a strong value in my family. I also grew up in Southern Connecticut, which is part of the New York metropolitan media market. What does that mean? It means that we were watching the news at night where the FBI was taking down mob families. Oh. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool. These guys use brain power to take down organized crime. So at age 11, and I tell this story in my first book, The FBI Way, at age 11, I write a letter to the head of the FBI in Connecticut. And I say, hey, I'm an 11-year-old kid, and I want to be an FBI agent. Well, son of a gun, he wrote me back personally and said, here's what you need to do. Get back to me in 14 or 15 years. And I did it.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, most people can't figure out what they want to do as a kid. I mean, I remember when I was that age, I was like, I don't know, I'll just be an astronaut or a lawyer. I mean, I think there was like 50 things you'd go through, and I, of course, grew up to be none of them. So,
hey, that's the way it goes.
There you go.
Most of us.
So you join the FBI, and they have a rigorous process to vet people. You can't just, I don't think they take me. I'm kind of not. I got one eye that's kind of bad with keratoconus, so they probably like, you're half blind. I don't think you're going to make the cut, and you're not the most brightest IQ person in the world.
Oh my, yes, it's rigorous. But I say this, look, there's 1,000 jobs in the FBI. I'm exaggerating, but it's something more like 400 job descriptions. Everybody seems to focus on the gun and badge special agents. That's the smallest group.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're looking at a total population of about 38,000 employees and only 14,000 special agents. So we've got PhD scientists, linguists, surveillance specialists, you name it, they've got it. And, people who think, I've got some physical issue or, whatever, I say, look, there's lots to do in the FBI.
Yeah. Maybe I can clean toilets over there or something. I know you have to be fit, too, I think, when using joint, don't you?
Hope for you, Chris.
You have to be pretty fit, don't you? You have to do the jogging and stuff like that?
For the special agent position, it's extremely rigorous to qualify and then to go through the academy. There's physical tests and, races and long distance and obstacle courses and shooting and defensive tactics, learning how to arrest somebody who doesn't want to be arrested, which is most of the people you're trying to handcuff. I can remember our one academy experience where they were teaching you to handcuff somebody under street fight conditions, and they put us literally in a cage like the MMA. Wow. And gave one of us a pair of handcuffs, and two of us were agents, and one was a bad guy, and we weren't coming out of the cage until somebody was handcuffed, hopefully the bad guy.
Hey guys, I got a new idea for when we have HR issues here at the office. How we're going to resolve it. This sounds great, an MMA cage. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. But I never lost, even after the FBI, 25 years, I am an investigator at heart. I'm the kid who would always read the mystery books. And so when I heard about the Highway Serial Killings Initiative and these staggering numbers, I had to learn for myself. The FBI could only tell me so much about pending cases, right?
Wow.
And they're not even the FBI cases. These are state and local and county cases. They're murders. The FBI's role is to connect the dots, do the behavioral analysis, the crime analysis with this computer system that's been set up. So I wanted to get out there on the street, and I did. 2,000 miles in a big rig.
Wow!
I can tell you, it's not the Ritz-Carlton in that sleeper berth. In the top bunk, and we did almost everything in that truck. I won't get graphic, but let's just say you fill a lot of gallon jugs when you're on there.
That's true. You got to keep rolling. You got to keep rolling there, and you got to eat a lot of that road food, man. Those greasy diners. In all seriousness, I do go into this in the book in terms of numerous medical studies of long-haul truckers, and it's not pretty, as you can imagine. It's very difficult to eat healthy on the road. We tried. We certainly tried. We cooked some of the food in our truck. Thank God the driver that was gracious enough to let me annoy him for 2,000 miles. He was a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. He had worked as a chef. He left being a chef to get even more money as a driver, because nowadays a good driver is making six figures. And thank God he cooked some very healthy meals for us. And then the exercise thing. Look, it's a sedentary position. Your legs start going numb after the first day. And you're standing up in the rig trying to get some exercise, but I did anyway. But thank God we drove flatbed. Yeah, Chris, it wasn't the driver who was standing up and walking around. Yeah.
But, I drove flatbed. And what that means is we were very physically engaged with the load, a different load every day that you are required to professionally figure out on how to do this. How many chains or straps? Do I chain it? Do I strap it? How do I tarp it? The tarps weigh 100 pounds rolled up. You flip them up onto the top of the trailer. Then you flip them up over the big load and drape them down. We had very complicated loads, including a suicide coil, which is you've seen these on the road, the rolled steel. That is, our rolled steel was probably 47,000 pounds. And they call it a suicide coil because if you don't properly chain it down, you will have that visiting you in your cab. Or it will roll off and hit someone on the street. So we had drywall. Our first load delivery was to pick up at a gypsum factory a huge stack of drywall made from gypsum and deliver it to the housing industry, which was really excited to see us after COVID. We had aluminum rods we picked up from an aluminum factory. And when I researched our delivery location, I found that it was a Department of Defense munitions factory. And that aluminum was going to become part of shell casings for the military. So brokers are an essential part of our economy. $870 billion in gross freight revenue last year. Grocery stores would stop 3 days if trucking stopped. But Chris, this book is also about the dark side, and the dark side is very dark, with lots of serial killing and surveys and research of truckers that tell us things like 10% of truckers drink alcohol every day, 20% of truckers binge drink 5 drinks or more at a time, 44% of long-haul truckers are exhibiting symptoms of major depression.
There you go. And it's a tough road. It's isolating being on the road for all those hours. I've known people that have families that are truckers, and they're gone sometimes for quite a long ways.
Be gone for months.
But you kind of experience with the big cabs they have, there's the bunk beds or whatever setup they have in their cabs. It's very probably easy to stash a body or to have someone enslaved back there or whatever. And they usually stop at very rural places. I mean, when I go on the road between Utah and Vegas, there's lots of truck stops that are just, there's no service there. You just pull off and it's woods.
So you're right about the ease with which you can abduct and even torture and rape a victim across the various jurisdictions. I feature in my book the most heinous long-haul trucker killers in history, and including modern day cases. So, for example, I start off describing Robert Ben Rhodes. Robert Ben Rhodes is good for about 50 murders of men and women. He was finally caught when an Arizona state trooper saw him pulled over with his hazard lights flashing. The trooper strolls up to the rig and hears a woman screaming. He looks in the truck, and she is shackled naked from the ceiling, screaming, which started unraveling the whole Robert Ben Rhodes case, which included his kidnap of a 14-year-old girl who was hitchhiking outside her neighborhood near Houston, Texas. He proceeds to kill her boyfriend that's accompanying her because he's a speed bump. He then takes her and tortures and rapes her in a torture chamber he's rigged up, including hanging her from fish hooks in the back of his rig. And she's raped and tortured for weeks until she is finally killed in an abandoned farmhouse in Illinois. And I'll tell you this, I have seen some grisly blood and gore crime scenes in my career, but there's a haunting image of Regina. It's not because it's bloody, it's not because of the content of the photo, but rather the context of the photo. This is the last photo of Regina alive. It was taken by Rhodes, and in it, when you know the context, she is clothed in a black dress that he had her wear, and high heels that he bought for her. Her hair is cut short into a bob that he did. In fact, he was cruel enough to call her father and say, "I've made some changes, I cut her hair." And in that photo, her arms are outstretched, her hands toward Rhodes, and the look on her face is abject horror as she's pleading for her life. That's an image that won't go away quickly. And finally, when they caught up, they found her body decomposing. The FBI agent who worked that scene said he finally found the signature of the killer he was looking for. And that signature was that Regina's pubic hair had been shaved before death.
And so he was able to trace the DNA?
There was DNA match, and then there was also the signature. That particular shaving thing was other subjects, other victims.
Okay.
They began to match. I get deep in the book into victimology and crime scenes. You're looking at even the knots that are used to choke someone. Were they choked with their own clothing or a rope? Were they shot, stabbed, or strangled? Were they naked or not? Were they raped after death? All of that is part of the book and part of crime analysis. And
the patterns of the killers and what they do and why they do things a certain way that can identify them. That's pretty wild. People really don't understand. The FBI gets thrown a lot of crap politically, especially in the last 7 years. But they really don't understand how much the folks of the FBI stand between us and a lot of the monsters in the world. and they don't hear about the daily stuff that, goes on. And sometimes we don't hear about things because maybe we shouldn't hear about, what's going on in the world, but we don't hear about the monsters in the world so much, and the daily protection that we have. And people really don't think about it.
They don't. And I appreciate you saying that, because during my career, I often pondered how much I knew that was going on just under the noses of American citizens. And I began to look at it like we were there to take that on and not burden the American people with that, many of whom their heads would explode if they knew what was going on. I had, early in my career, there was an assistant director at headquarters. I got called into his office one time to brief him on a very sensitive case. And I'm a young kid at the time, and I've never been in the AD's office. We're done with the briefing. I turn around and I see on the back of his door a poster that I had never seen before. And it said, "America is at peace because the FBI is at war." And that is true. It's true.
That would make a great book title, man.
Hey, co-author with me. Co-author.
There you go. I like that. That would be a really good thing. I'm working on my book on leadership, and we're going to be interviewing some people from the government on leadership, and the military branches do amazing leadership stuff, like
they do. They do. Marines particularly, and great programs at West Point for officers.
We've had somebody who teaches at West Point, the main leadership program up there, on the show for his book. I forget his name, but just great stuff. So you go through this journey. I imagine you saw the lot lizards, they call them. I think kind of a derogatory term on the there's these women who do the sex trade. You can see them at the Flying J's and the different truck stops and stuff. I imagine that also it makes it easier for these serial killers to pick up victims and stuff.
Yeah, there's been an evolution here that's very interesting. Like the rest of our society, things have gone online. And so very few lot lizards today are prowling, usually under the watchful eye of a pimp, the parking lot of a truck stop. The big companies have cleaned up the act. Years ago, it was certainly the sense of many that the big companies looked the other way when that was happening on their lots, because they felt like the truckers might want this service. And then there was tremendous pressure from citizen groups and social groups to tamp this down. And so the good news is there's less of that physically taking place in the truck lots. However, things have moved online, not surprising. And even as I drove through very rural small towns, I would get online and see what was happening. And I indeed saw advertising aimed at truckers. This is the kind of advertising that years ago would have taken place on the CB radio. Literally, the woman would get on the CB radio and say, anybody want some commercial? That was code for sex for money. And a trucker would respond, yeah, I'm at the Flying J. I'm in the red house, the red truck in the back of the corner there. Today, almost all online advertising targeting truckers. And where does it happen? So sometimes you'll see ads that say, I come to you, which means it's going to happen in that cab. But increasingly, it's off campus. It's off the lot. So it's in a nearby seedy motel or massage parlor. And this makes things really dangerous, even more for the victim, because now she's really alone. When it was happening in the truck lots, I've got many stories of women kicking, screaming, breaking out window of the truck. If this is happening now with a killer trucker in the massage parlor or the seedy motel, law enforcement has no idea who did this. There'll be a dead body found the next morning, they've got no clue who did this.
And usually, imagine truck lots have, cameras everywhere, but if they're going to some seedy place, there's probably, by intention, no cameras there.
Exactly.
And that just makes an advantage. I won't be hitchhiking anytime soon after reading your book, Frank.
I appreciate that. There are some tips about staying safe in there, particularly for women who travel long distances. Particularly, I hope there's increased awareness and vigilance, like not using the truck stop for fuel. Stay fueled up. Use only the car, portion, and even just a gas station without any room for trucks is preferable. If you get an uneasy feeling on the road, like I am being followed, This guy is stopping when I stop. This guy keeps following me. Call 911 and be situationally aware. They're going to ask you, where are you? I'm on mile marker 7 on I-75 North. Here's the truck, and they'll stay with you. They'll catch up to the truck, but trust your gut on that. If you're gassing up, put your key fob in your pocket, lock the doors, keep your wallet in your pocket, all of that. Just be aware of what's going on around you. And I ask a couple of key questions in the book, Chris. Which kind of trucker in which kind of truck is more willing to kill? Second question, which kind of trafficked victim with which work style, because there's 3 work styles, pimp controlled, renegade, and outlaw. And there's 2 kinds of pimps, guerrilla pimp, finesse pimp. Which kind of victim is more likely to fall prey to a trucker?
Wow.
Those are the kinds of questions we ask in the book.
Wow. I drive a lot between Utah and Vegas, and I'm old now. There's a lot of stops for the number one, and there's a few stops I know that don't have services. They don't have anything. They're actually kind of like U-turn stops, I seems, or something, or they have some sort of farm road that goes back. But I always pull off those stops, and there's always trucks sitting there, and I just don't think anything. I just kind of go off in the woods there a little bit and whatever. But I won't be doing that anymore. No, we'll be stopping there. I might.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, there's sex transactions happening at those remote rest stops. So
really,
the woman will often get driven there by the pimp.
Oh wow!
And I talked to 2 women as part of my research who were trafficked to truckers and survived violent encounters.
Wow. With
truckers. Both of those women now helping to run resource centers for women like them who need to escape and decided to escape. I visited a residential facility in Phoenix, Arizona called Starfish Place, doing phenomenal things with survivors of trafficking who themselves have young children. Fantastic program and research going on there. But the rest stops, the Vegas area is one of the few in the country where you're still physically going to see women plying the trade at truck stops.
Yeah. That's Vegas for you. Especially out in Pahrump, I guess, where it's legal technically. On your book, The FBI Way, you were here in 2022 about that, and we talked kind of at length at some of the different. We've had people like Peter Strzok on the show, and different folks from the FBI. I think we had some Justice Department people on recently. They weren't in the criminal division, or I think they were in the business criminal division. But we talked at that time about the kind of some of the abuse the FBI had taken politically from the Trump administration. Let's just put it frankly, and it seems like that's still going on. Recently they've accused the FBI of trying to kill him,
trying to assassinate him when he was 1,000 miles away.
Yeah, conveniently arranged with the Secret Service. But so how do you feel like the FBI's image has recovered, or the abuse of the FBI's image has recovered since the Trump administration? Have things gotten better? Is things, the image between James Comey, getting beat up by Donald Trump and stuff, do you think it's recovered and it's kind of returned more to a healthier sort of respect for the FBI?
So it's recovered, period. I think that it's in recovery. I think, this is almost like, how we would talk about an alcoholic or a drug addict. You're always in recovery. I think this is going to take a generation to restore the credibility in our institutions, if we ever do it. I say institutions plural because very few people are now saying that the Supreme Court is credible. The center, of all places, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, half of America is going, I don't know if I believe anything they say. We're in this rabbit hole of disinformation and propaganda where, people think, yesterday on the Hill, Attorney General Merrick Garland was castigated about, you're in charge of the New York State DA case. It's all being driven from, and he kept having to say, this is Matt Gaetz. He was, talking to. Yeah. Hey, Congressman Gaetz, we don't control the Manhattan DA's office. You're out of your mind.
I'm still wondering how Matt Gaetz wormed out of that all those charges in that case.
Some of the top journalists I know are still working that question.
Yeah.
How was a declination of prosecution filed in his particular case? We may never know. And where's the ethics case in Congress? I know McCarthy started, Kevin McCarthy. Yeah. Where is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. That seemed like an open shut case. I was following it a lot and reading it, and that seemed like a really simple, easy case. I mean, the one guy went away for a long time, but and you traffic in underage kids. I mean, that's like Epstein level sort of stuff.
My only guess, and it's conjecture. Having worked in my FBI career, I supervised for a year a crimes against children squad in San Francisco. That was an ugly year, but proving that you had the knowledge that this young lady was truly underage, particularly if you're telling your buddy who's setting this up for you that I don't want to know.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, all the text messages and
please don't
in there.
Factor. I don't want to imply that there's legal consent if you're underage, because there's never. But if you've got a victim who's going, yeah, I signed up for sugar daddy and I lied about my age and whatever and all of this. Now the prosecutors, who always like things tied up in a neat little bow, are going to go, I don't like to lose. So I don't know about this. That could be happening.
Yeah. Director James Comey was on the news, and of course he was predicting the outcome of the Trump trial, which he did really well. He nailed it. He was plugging his book too. We should probably get a plug in for that. And he was talking about if Trump does win in 2024, I mean, they're very clear at what they're going to do. They're going to carve out the institutions, and I'm sure the FBI and the Justice Department are number one on their list to interfere with the rule of law, and of course, probably eliminate the January 6th criminal trial, the classified documents. It's just astounding to me that thing is not gone to court officially yet.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget that judge, Aileen Cannon, down in Florida. Yeah. She will guarantee you she'll be quickly promoted by Trump if he wins to the appellate court and ultimately to a Supreme Court role, which she appears to be auditioning for. Yes, I don't want to hear anybody say that they're shocked and amazed when Trump wins and he starts dismantling government institutions, the FBI, the DOJ, putting his own people in at lower levels, right? Because one of the things they seem to be working on is doing away with civil service protections for career employees. So imagine this. Imagine that the head of every field office in the FBI, everywhere across the states, has to take a loyalty pledge to Trump, and he's handpicked. No longer necessarily career people either in those positions. Then imagine the folks who prosecute federally. Every U.S. attorney is now taking a loyalty pledge. Now try to get a corruption case done against anybody who is a Republican. You'll put a case against Russia or China. No, probably not. The DNI will be a Trump loyalist. The Attorney General will be somebody like, God help us, I don't know, Sidney Powell. I mean, it's going to get ridiculous. And I don't want to hear anybody say that they're shocked and amazed by what happens.
And it's just amazing to me that people just think it's they're just like, oh, whatever, I'm sure it'll be fine.
It was totally fine. Yeah.
You read about, I believe it's the Heritage Projects, Project 2025.
Yes.
Have you read about this yet?
Oh yes. Oh yeah. There's names of people being submitted and drafted as cabinet secretaries, and below people being talked to right now. You've got people. It's interesting. You've got a couple of different kinds of Trump supporters. Those who say, yeah, I've heard all this. I've heard it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he'll rise to the occasion, with total nonsense. And I'm not that worried about it. Come on. Some of that's unconstitutional. And then you've got other people who go, yeah, I'm hearing about it and I'm good with it. Excuse me, you're good with what? You're good with doing away with civil service protection. You're good with telling the intelligence community that they can't even collect on certain topics. Certain cases can't be worked at FBI. Really? Are we going to get Mike Flynn as Secretary of Defense?
Jesus.
A convicted felon again, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to recruit 54,000 loyal MAGA Republicans to replace existing federal servants, and so just it's basically a fascist authoritarian style government.
Yeah, it's about as close as you can get.
They're going to disable all the checks and balances. And it's funny. Everybody around Trump has now been prosecuted as a felon, pretty much,
including his lawyers.
Yeah, including your lawyers. I mean, what does that tell you?
Yeah.
And just, some of these Americans that are just like, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't know. We don't, the economy is there's some inflation that's high because of COVID. Yeah, maybe we should retry that Trump thing again.
I mentioned in my book, Long Haul, that there are many trucking companies who are part of a second chance program for convicted felons. They hire.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Like Western Express is a second chance company, and they're permitted. The government permits them to do hiring for convicted felons. I think if Trump wins, we're going to be looking at his administration as the largest employer of convicted felons.
Wow.
In the history of the United States. And Mike Flynn and Sidney Powell and all these other people will be a part of the administration, not to mention the president himself if he wins.
Yeah. It's just extraordinary to me. I'm just holding on to faith. The middle part of America pulls us through this one, and people hold on. I just got to believe in. I always have that voice in my head, like the beginning of Godfather. I believe in America. I'm believing in the good people of America, that there's enough of us.
I still have hope. I still believe the majority of Americans will turn out and do the right thing.
Yeah, democracy can end in an instance.
To preserve democracy. I think is so disturbing, Chris, is that there is a significant portion of Americans who actually are rethinking whether we should or should not be a democracy. Yeah. That's the scary part.
Yeah, you see the interviews on TikTok. There's a couple of these guys that do these interviews on TikTok and different social channels, and they go out with mics. And a lot of these MAGA people, they're like, yeah, I think it's time we gave up that democracy thing. Yeah, we need a king. We need somebody to whip this country into shape.
And they're thinking, I mean, look, some of this I get. I'm not going to pretend that I don't understand where they're coming from. This concept that 3 equal branches of government, doesn't really get anything done. So I like the idea of a strong president, an authoritarian president to kick some ass. They have no knowledge, by the way, of how that would happen legally. They don't. You put boots on the ground in American soil and start shooting shoplifters. What? And so it can't get done. But the fact that you think that's cool, and you don't want any checks or balances on a leader, understand that's a dictator.
Yeah. And the economy goes to hell too, because they start putting their fingers on it. I mean, I watched Venezuela 20, 30 years ago, and what was its name came into power and just started fucking up one of the richest oil countries in the world.
Chavez.
Chavez, he started mucking with everything. And you could just see it. I watched him slowly take it apart and drive that country in the ground because he kept wanting to put his thumb on the scale. And that they tried a little bit of that the last time. But, yeah, so hopefully we can survive all of this and come out the other side. I don't know what it's going to take to have the MAGA Trump thing. I mean, maybe he has to have a heart attack or something, and it just has to kind of end that way, and maybe the country wakes up.
I've heard some people, I don't adhere to this, but I've heard some people suggest that maybe the only thing that makes this go away is 4 more years where everybody realizes this is a total disaster, and then you'll see him gone. My concern, of course, is what damage is done in those 4 years.
Yeah. Silvio Berlusconi, the head of Italy, I remember he had 2 terms. And between his first and second term, they didn't prosecute him for any of his things or deal with any of the issues he created in the first term. He came back in the second term, was far worse.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I remember when Donald Trump won office, they actually put 2 female journalists from Italy on, and they're like, you guys just elected Silvio Berlusconi. That's what you did.
It's true.
You elected a madman, and have fun with that. Yeah, and they were right. Frank, it's been wonderful to have you on. Anything new you're working on? Is there a book upcoming maybe you want to tease out?
Boy, I'm so glad to be in the middle of promoting this book that I can't even think of a next one. But I'll tell you this, we're getting strong interest from production companies for Long Haul. it could be sold soon for a movie or limited TV series. We'll see about that. I have a new YouTube show called Frankly, a hard look at America's soft spots. We've had people like Adam Kinzinger on, a really good interview of a really good person. Check that out. That usually drops every Monday. And again, the website, frankfigliuzzi.com. Buy the book, Long Haul, even the audio version I read myself, 3 days of nonstop reading, which was wonderful for my voice. And get in touch with me through Twitter or through Instagram or through my website.
There you go. Thank you very much again, Frank, for coming on the show. And we'd love to have you again in the future. Keep coming on back.
Stay safe, everybody.
All right, thank you. And thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should happen.